Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to today's amazing webinar on unleashing the potential of student learning, exploring the future ready emerging practices guides. My name is Dr. Adam Fayal. I am the Director of Professional Learning and Leadership for All for Ed, and I am excited to be here today. Hopefully you are just as excited as I am, but it's not about me, everybody. It's about our amazing panelists that we have here. You don't know the links we went through to get these people, because these are like people who are the top of the top, the creme de la creme, dare I say. And you know, because the cream always rises to the top. And that's what I have here. I have the cream of the crop, ladies and gentlemen. And I'm going to bring them up here right now and let them tell you who they are and what they're bringing to the stage. So, you know what? Ladies first. So coming on up to the stage right now, we have Dr. Aaliyah Henderson Rosser.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Hi, universe. This is Aaliyah Henderson Rosser. I'm in Atlanta Public Schools. Proud to be here, and I'm proud to be the Assistant Superintendent for Instructional Technology here at APS.
Now, Aaliyah.
Yeah.
I'm excited you're able to squeeze us into your day, because I know you have a lot of things going on. So thank you for being here today.
Absolutely. It's been start of the school year. School starts August 1st. And so we're here trying to make it all work, putting it all together. Big professional learning days today. So a lot going on, but I wouldn't miss it for the world.
Well, I'm glad we're in person and not virtual, because that's a whole nother story about a couple of years ago when we had to go virtual. We're not going back there.
It's not. I'm okay with the current space. I can make it work right now.
All right, next coming to our virtual stage, all the way from Illinois. Let's see. There we go. Steve, how's it going?
Lovely, thank you. And yourself?
Hey, I'm happy that you're here.
I'm happy to be here. So I'm Steve Dembo. I'm the Director of Digital Innovation at Western Springs District 101. And I believe that may actually be the first time I've actually gotten to formally say that, as I just started there a few short weeks ago. So excited to be here.
All right. Thank you for being here. And Steve brings a wealth of knowledge on just about everything to the stage right now. And you know what? This next person, some of you may know him from some podcasting that I do. You know, I only have one podcast that I do with him, but you know, he has taken upon himself to do other podcasts without me out there. But it's okay. I don't feel any kind of way about it. Coming to the stage now, we have Mr. Carl Hooker.
Hey there, Adam. Welcome, everybody. Yes, Carl Hooker, a 25-year educator from Austin, Texas. I do have 5 podcasts, only one with Dr. Adam Fayal. Unfortunately, we need to make more of them, Adam, but I think I can only handle one with him, to be honest. 7 books, written 7 books on education, delving deep into the AI work with Future Ready. I'm also a Future Ready National Advisor, and just excited to hear a lot about, of course, all the fun things that we're doing in education today, especially around AI. Check the box. How many times we're going to say it? Get your bingo cards ready.
Yeah, we need to have that virtual counter up on the screen and start it. You know, and one thing I love about this panel that we have today, we have people who are practitioners in the field doing the work. We have thought leaders, and you know, we needed someone to bring a little magic to the stage. And he probably hates hearing people say this anyway, but you know, Magic Mike.
Magic Mike.
Magic Mike from Microsoft.
Oh, Magic Microsoft.
So yeah, hey, I'm Mike Dolphin from the Microsoft Education Product Team. And so my team builds a lot of the education software at Microsoft, whether it is Teams for Education, our learning accelerators, OneNote Education, our inclusive and accessible tools. And then also, you know, as Carl said, got to ring the bell. My team also is thinking and building a lot of AI experiences. And so some of those we've talked about publicly, some of them are still top secret, but we're neck deep in AI these days.
Oh yeah. And so for those keeping count, that's like 4 times we've said the word AI. So it's keeping going throughout this webinar. You know, we got to have the tally going there.
Yeah. I'm ready for the top secret reveal. That's what I want
to know. You're burying the lead there. What is the reveal? At the end of this show, you will find out.
Right.
That's a teaser in the business, folks.
All right. So, one of those things that I kind of just want to hop right into some of the topics we're going to talk about today. The thing, of course, is fresh on everyone's mind. We're hearing it every day. AI, 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 AI. And I don't mean Allen Iverson, because we're not talking about practice here. We're talking about the thing that's everywhere right now in education. So it's kind of going around. What excites you the most about the potential use of AI in education? Because there's so many ways we've seen it used. And the potential is really limitless. So what excites you the most about it? Go ahead and start us off, Steve.
Oh, wow. What excites me the most is just to see where the impact that this is going to have broadly on the way that we interact online. I genuinely think that within about 2 years from now, literally every single website that we interact with is going to have, some be powered by AI in some way, shape, or form behind the scenes. It's going to be as ubiquitous as, at one point, not so long ago, websites didn't have that social element of leaving comments and likes and upvotes and those kinds of things. And those are all relatively new things. I think AI is going to have that same sort of transformative impact across the board. So, I mean, that's exciting to me to just realize that we're in the midst of one of those kinds of seismic shifts.
Like it.
Okay, Aaliyah, since you like it, what would you like to add to that?
That's good. For me, I'm excited about the personalization of learning for students using AI. For a long time, we preached about differentiation. For a teacher to do that well, it's really difficult. It takes a really gifted teacher. It's very time consuming to personalize learning for every single student. If you're thinking about learning style, learning pace, what they need, that's incredibly hard to do. So I am excited about the possibilities of AI when it comes to goal setting for students and what it means for flexible path and pace for students. And that means it's going to kind of give teachers a lot of power, in their fingertips, and as well as students, to really be able to get proficient in whatever that content area is. Everything starts with math and reading all the time, and we always forget about our science teachers and social studies teachers. I was a science teacher. AI is covering the gamut right now, and so we don't have to wait on that content personalization. So I'm excited about that and what it can do for us.
Yeah, and I want to add on to that too, Aaliyah. You mentioned something about time, and I think that's what excites me the most is the fact that right now, and I feel like this has been the case in education for a long time, but now, especially more than ever, we face this time famine in education where teachers just don't have time. Too many initiatives, too many things to really get down deep and really start to hit on personalization, which you also talked about. I think we've said it for a buzzword for a number of years, but now what AI is going to do is give teachers a little bit of time back, but it's also going to allow students to dive deeper into what they're learning and just kind of, I think, like Steve said, we're really at the tip of the iceberg here too. I don't think we've even in a couple of years, I don't know, Steve, it's gonna be amazing to see what it looks like. But for me, I feel like we're still just on that uptick slope, and we've gotten kind of past the fear phase. There's still some of the fear there, but for me, I'm just excited for the time saving. Mike, what about you?
Yeah, actually, both Aaliyah and Carl hit the two things that I was going to talk about. So time saving for sure, like saving educators' time, just saving staffers' time, administrators' time. There's an enormous amount of sort of bureaucratic crunching down I think AI can help with. But on the student side, personalization for sure. And actually, so to tie it into something that our team has announced, it's in private preview right now, but we have something that's called reading progress. Everyone always talks about writing and the apocalypse and essays and plagiarism. And I like to say, think about this instead with something like reading progress, which can analyze a student's reading fluency using AI. But what we're doing now is what we can personalize. You get all this data from reading progress, and an educator can personalize a reading passage using AI based on the words that the student had most mispronounced. So students mispronounce different words. We inject that into the passage generation, which can then tailor those next passages that are personalized to the things that students are struggling with. Like who's going to argue with AI for helping with reading, right? Like to me, that's so non-controversial and sort of related to personalization, just the accessibility. So thinking about students that might struggle, AI is incredible for assistive technology, personalization, even things like immersive reader, translation, different languages, generating tailored reading passages in 120 different languages. There's a whole host of inclusive and accessible tools that AI supercharges. And so then these students are not left behind, and educators don't have to spend that enormous amount of time that they don't have. AI can help personalize to help all students across, the whole spectrum. So I'm excited.
And the amount of data that reading progress gives an educator, Lexile levels, they've got libraries full of different passages. I mean, we're using it in our district. We're expanding the use of that. It is really one of the most exciting tools I've seen come along in a while.
And the great thing about that, it has such it can have such tremendous impact, because right now we're seeing reading scores take a hit coming out of the pandemic across the country. And so tools like this can really help bridge those gaps that we're seeing. So, since we're having a really good conversation right now around the AI component, I do want to follow up with something else to the panelists. As you're talking about, being excited about AI, there are some people who have concerns. So let me ask you this: how do you address the concerns of whether it's teachers thinking that, Mike, you mentioned, oh, everyone's going to cheat now using AI, nobody's going to write a paper anymore, or parents thinking that, their children will not be prepared for the future because either the school system's blocking it or their school system's not blocking it, and their kids are quote unquote cheating and finding out all the answers on AI. So how do you kind of demystify those things in your respective spaces?
I think one of the most important things is to keep your mind, your eyes on the bigger picture. I think all too often, a lot of districts get so paranoid or so fixated on this cheating thing and what are we going to do about that they kind of stop having conversations about all these other places where it can have a tremendous impact. The things that Mike and Carl were all just talking about. So making sure that, yes, it needs to be a conversation how we're going to handle what essays look like, how they're used, and what we do about students who are cheating and so on and so forth. But also keeping that in perspective, that is one very, very small part of a much, much larger conversation, and to not get bogged down in that. Not to say that we don't need to, not to diminish that whatsoever, but not to let that dominate the conversation like it seems to have in the news cycles.
Yeah, I'll just add, I've been around long enough that the same thing was said when Google came along. Like, they're going to Google answers. It's what it was the same argument. And I won't go back as far as when calculators came out. I won't go back that far. But I mean, it's educating our community. It's educating our teachers. You may need to level up your assignments. I mean, that may be a real conversation. And we've talked about rigor for a long time. This really may bring that conversation to the forefront. And we've just got to get better at how we assess learning. And it may not be go write a 10-page paper. That may not be the way we assess anymore. So I think we're going through a transition phase. We did this already. All of us have been in this for a little while. And yes, kids Googled answers. They still Google answers, and they are still learning. So I think we've just got to look at balance both the good and the bad. So AI for good.
Yeah, actually, I think a great example of that in action. If you remember, a month or so after ChatGPT came out, New York City banned it, turned it off for the entire city.
Yep.
Actually, Microsoft, we have people in New York City on our team, and we worked with New York City, and they ultimately came back and said, hey, we actually want to be the leaders in AI. We want to get ahead of this. And Microsoft partnered with them on some projects we announced recently. They've re-enabled it, and now they want to move to the forefront, right? So that's a great story. And again, not to, as Steve was saying, not to say, oh, everything's perfect, but I think it went from a shut it all down to, okay, this is going to be a thing. This is going to be how the society is moving. So let's try to engage and figure out what is going to work, what isn't going to work. And it might be redesign. But there's also, for students and educators, a lot of it is understanding how to practice with prompts, to iterate, to play with this stuff, because it's something that you do need to experiment with, you do need to explore. And right now it's changing rapidly enough to where if you just feel like, well, there's that thing over there and I'm going to ignore it, that's going to be a problem at some point. So you might as well sort of jump in and start playing.
Yeah. I think one of the things that schools have always focused on is we're very product driven. We all grade, we assess on the product. I think what this is going to force schools to do, which is good, is to also assess the process. Like how were things created? What was, you can't cheat that. And it's funny because I texted Steve earlier today asking him for, what is a good cheat detector app out there, right? And there's a few, but none of them are perfect. In fact, there's lots of stories about how those are actually misdetecting and getting kids in trouble when they shouldn't be. And so I think it comes back to, okay, let's look at the process and see what that's about. What I think is ironic about all of this is there was a huge pandemic 2-3 years ago that I thought was going to shift everything with education and learning. I don't think that was it. I think this is it. I think this is going to be the thing that changes teachers to say like, wow, okay, we can't just keep assessing product. We have to add in process to part of that. And to go to the fears and the concerns of parents, I think I heard a great analogy at ISTE actually, and it was a teacher had told me, she said, we all know how to walk. And I think walking is important, and you can walk a certain distance, but then we have a bike that can get us a little further, and a car that can get us a little further, and a plane that can get us even further, and then a rocket ship, right? All of those are still tools, but when you get to wherever you're going to go, you still need to know how to walk. And I think that's the same thing with a tool like Copilot or like ChatGPT. You're still going to need to know the basics of it, but it's going to let you go somewhere further, faster, and deeper when it comes to learning, which I think is also good. So we're not going to skip all the walking just to go straight to the rocket ship. I think we still have that as part of our process.
Nice.
Hey, you mentioned Copilot. I got so excited watching that video release. And I know it's not ready for tomorrow, everything that was shown, but I was like, oh my gosh, just the potential of what that can mean to daily use. Even when I think about a teacher who wants to use technology in the classroom, having a tool where they could just put in what they want to teach, and then the AI tool spits out, hey, these are resources that you have available, and how you can make that lesson what you want it to be for your students. You are truly allowing the AI to co-pilot the classroom, no pun intended there, and really assist in the classroom. So, because ultimately all this stuff that we're doing is to prepare our students for whatever their future is, whatever that future looks like. So let me ask you this: as our districts are leveraging AI, technology, devices, all these things that are out there, how can they prepare students for future work careers? It's one thing when we talk about, of course, our high school students right now, but we talk about career pathways and things of that nature. How can we really all get together and really help get those students to that next level?
I think we've got to embrace and drive the change. That's what companies are asking their employees to do around machine learning and AI, and we've got to do the same thing. And AI is only as good as we are. Like it feeds off the data that we give it. So we've got to ask the right questions. You've got to ask it the right way to get the output that you want. So we really got to teach our students to be critical thinkers. We talk about it all the time. The 4 C's they've been around for a minute, but we do have to embrace it. This is the big shift. I agree. If we're not teaching our kids how to think about how to think, then we're doing them a disservice. So we've got to get them prepared for the workforce. And that's now what the workforce is requiring.
Yeah. I think one interesting thing from now on more, you can say on the STEM side, but I'll talk about the non-STEM side as well. I think on the STEM related side, for example, Microsoft Learn is a great source. We have all sorts of tech tracks, whether it's Azure or cloud skills, machine learning skills, analytical skills, core tools. All of those are going to be important no matter what if you're in that STEM field. And again, there's various, you don't need to have a PhD in each of those categories. Another interesting thing is that some of the data analysis tools with AI, in a good way, it's actually lowering the bar for, I don't need a PhD in machine learning to actually start doing some of these data science concepts.
Yep.
And it makes it much easier for people who don't have the same PhD level expertise to do really compelling analysis. So Leah said, like, that problem solving set of skills can be applied to many more people. It's no longer the ivory tower of the data scientist. You're going to have all sorts of people who can come up with really interesting insights on all sorts of things that in the past, it was only the monk in the ivory tower who could do those things.
Yeah.
And then on the flip side, I think something that AI has no impact on is the ability for people to communicate. So that communication skills is a core future ready skill in any field. typically you need to be able to communicate. And so, again, I tie this to some of the work we're doing. We work on things like Speaker Coach and something called Speaker Progress that can actually uses AI in the background to give people audio and even body language feedback on how they're communicating. Something that's super time intensive for an educator to go and give detailed feedback every week on communication, right? Unless you're going to Toastmasters, which a lot of students go to. Then, hey, here's a way to scale that rich feedback on communication, because a good communicator will do better typically in almost any field out there, no matter what it is. Being able to communicate your ideas, being able to have that influence or impact is something that I think is important for all students to be able to get a handle on.
Can we get a bonus point for the Toastmasters reference? I just like that. Yeah, that's awesome. I'll add to that too, and just kind of what the two of you were saying. A lot of the work I look at is based through the World Economic Forum as well, and they always put out their list of top future job skills that they'll need to teach that our future employers will want. And communication's on there. It's one of the top 5 always. Creativity, Aaliyah, going back to the 4 C's, that's on there. And a lot of the machine learning things you were mentioning, Mike, those are also on there. There's also things like leadership, social leadership and influence and perseverance and grit and resilience, things that don't necessarily, they kind of fit between the cracks of what we're teaching in education. But I think in more ways than not, we need to also raise those up, because I feel like a lot of times kids don't get to experience real true collaboration or failure unless they're on a sports team. So how do we invite that or invent that in a classroom? And I think we need to create more opportunities for kids to also figure out, how do we collaborate? How do we learn from our failures? And then how do we continue to make our end product better? So it's, again, process and product kind of going hand in hand. So for me, those future skills I think are so important. It just kind of ties into what both of y'all were saying.
Yeah, here in Atlanta, we affectionately call the Silicon Valley of the South. And so
that's supposed to be Austin.
Right. It's pretty awesome. But we've got to have a workforce. We've got to have a workforce that can compete. And it's really difficult to try to help meet all of those needs just in the school district, alone. So we need partners that help us do that. And the Microsoft certifications are a big part of that work, and just letting students know what's out there, what's available. You can try it out. Try out this. It's there. It's available. Try it out. See what is speaking to you. What do you have a passion about? What do you want to do? And just kind of dip your toe in some of these different certifications and find out where you want to go with it. And so we've done a little bit of that with our career tech work, and that's just a great resource out there that Microsoft has for everyone. So it helps.
I think this isn't necessarily something new, but I think it's becoming even more of an issue with this whole AI revolution. We need to stop telling students how to demonstrate their knowledge and understanding for us. We need to allow our projects to be more open-ended, and stop giving them step-by-step instructions for how to be successful. Focusing absolutely on the ideas and the things that we want them to learn, that doesn't change, but the way that students give it back to us and what they create with it and where they take it, I just feel like we're doing our students a disservice if we keep giving them these prescribed ways to demonstrate what they've learned. Especially with AI right now, there's just so much opportunity for them to share their knowledge in unbelievably creative ways. And the biggest issue is, especially right now, we don't even know what's possible. I can't tell a student that this is the best way for you to demonstrate your learning, or this is how you should use AI to do it, when literally every single day I am seeing new applications for it, new tricks that people are doing with it. And we need our students to feel comfortable pushing on these boundaries. Not, Carl hit it when he's talking about this embracing failure, but they need to feel that school is a safe zone where they can take chances, take risks, and push on these boundaries and see where they go, because quite frankly, I think students are going to be the ones, if we look at from right now through the end of the school year, my hunch is most of the innovation is going to be coming from the students. We'll hear about it through their teachers, but I think it's the students who are going to be discovering them.
I totally agree with you on that. And I mean, everyone's brought up some really great points there. I know, Mike, you brought up a really great point about just how information almost used to be in this ivory tower for certain people. You had to have so much education in order to do it. Even when you look right now at graphic design, you had to take, Photoshop classes and all this stuff to learn how to do things. Now in a couple of seconds, my 5-year-old can remove a background from an image, can add voiceover, can animate a stagnant picture using some tools and applications. So it's really simple and easy, but that information, that knowledge has now made its way down to a 5-year-old. So when you talk about what you can do with AI, having access makes all the difference. So going on that, how can like leaders and school systems ensure that we have equitable access of these resources and tools to students? Because it's, if we talk about this stuff, but if they don't have access to it, then they can't do it. So what are some ways that we can really take this challenge and make sure that all students, means all, have access to these resources? Carl, you want to start us off?
Yeah, I think this is probably one of the hardest ones to answer, honestly. And I think it comes back to, we can reflect, first of all, on the last 4 or 5 years and think about the first challenge was getting access and technology in the hands of all kids. And that was accelerated by a pandemic, which was great. And that did help us. I'm not saying a pandemic was great. I'm saying what it caused as an output was great, because now we're able to get these tools in the hands of kids. Well, now we're faced with this other challenge. And Mike kind of alluded to it earlier, where you'll have school districts are going to say, okay, we will or will not teach based on, whatever our belief systems are, or whatever the privacy rules are around certain tools, especially around AI, again, which is a future tool. We've just talked about it for the last 20 minutes. So now they have to kind of get their hands around it and think, like, how do we actually do this in a right and proper way? And I think, Adam, you and I have talked about this too for a long time, and that is what ends up happening. It seems to be by default, and I don't know if this is always across the board, but as schools that score poorly, let's say on reading and math, Leah brought that up too. Those are still kind of the big driving forces behind all of this. As they tend to not do well, what happens to those kids is that they are kind of, put through the trials and tribulations of drill and kill type tools and apps to get them sped up and caught up, versus creativity, innovation, all the things that we all just talked about that are important for the future of kids. Those are left to the wayside because we want to make sure that they have enough of the base scores to get them to that point. I think what has to happen to make that more equitable is there needs to be a kind of a marriage of the two. Yes, they still need those foundational skills, don't get me wrong, but I do think you need to also continue to introduce them to these other future concepts. And I think, AI hopefully, again, will play a role in it, but it's not going to be a panacea. It's not going to fix everything that we ask. And so for me, I think when you think about equitable access, it's going to come down to that marriage of the use of technology with the use and implementation of curriculum, how it's implemented, what's the diversification of instructional strategies that are used, and all of those things kind of put into one, to really have kids, give them a chance at what they're heading toward in the future, versus basically shutting doors down on them along the way.
Mm-hmm. We had a summer leadership that, like everybody has every year. We had a summer leadership conference. And sometimes I think in K-12 education, you almost have to give people permission to go do. So we did something called a license to innovate. And we really took it probably too far, in which we had each principal literally build a license. We had some self-laminating, foldables that went over the Polaroid picture. Write your name. The superintendent will sign it. You have a license to innovate. So we're saying, if you can think about it and it's great for kids, go and do it. So I think that we're in this space where it's right here. We're so close, but people are kind of nervous about taking it, owning it, and disseminating it to every single student. And that's exactly what we need to do. It should be easy. It should be easy, but we know, we're in education. And so we have to make things super hard, and we're not big proponents of change. I mean, it's just not that industry that takes on and embraces change. But equity in access is not just the tool, or it's not just the device. It's the learning experience. It literally needs to be a seat at the table. That is what's equitable. for you to be able to reference an experience where you've done some type of internship, you have access to some type of certification, you know industry leaders around this work, that you can go and say, hey, this is what I want to do, how can you help me? That's, to me, is that equitable access. It's far beyond the device and the tools at this point.
The great points there. Sometimes it's just letting people know the resources are there so they can gain access to it.
Yeah.
You mentioned with the Learn resource on Microsoft, just students knowing they're there. Even the parents knowing that they're there, they can gain access to those resources and go through those things as well. Mike, can you add to that?
Yeah, I was actually going to make a very similar point. I'll give two specific examples. So from the equitable access, especially for students that struggle or students with accessibility needs or assistive technology, I work a lot in that space. And unfortunately for me, one of the most common things I hear is, oh my gosh, Mike, we had access to all these tools that are built into Windows, that are built into M365, the most incredible accessibility tools, and nobody knew. Yeah. Why is that, Mike? It's a case where literally sometimes I feel like Santa Claus. I'm like, you already have some of the top cutting edge accessible tools in the world right there. Like, it's literally open that right there. And so part of it on us is making sure they know. The phrase I use is built in, mainstream, non-stigmatizing, and free. Because a lot of these other tools, like a school district spends a lot of money, the students don't like to use it because it's this expensive doodad and they feel like they're different from the other kids. And so a lot of it is, hey, when it's built in, available to everyone, and it's free, like that's nice for a lot of kids, and they're life-changing tools for a lot of kids. And I say life-changing, I'm sure you folks all know that. Sometimes in Microsoft, outside of the education space, people don't realize, like, do you realize the thing that we just created is going to change the lives of millions of kids? Yeah. Oh, really? I didn't even realize that. Well, it will. And I think on the flip side, with AI, equity in AI, even right now, you could say, well, there's the Chat GPT that's free. That's the lesser version. The better version is $20 a month, which a lot of people can't afford that. But a lot of people, again, they don't know. Bing right now, Bing Chat has GPT-4 essentially built in, and it's free, and it's available for anyone, and it's got search built in as well. So there's some places where it's wired to the real internet. You get citations built in. So even with AI, because AI, unfortunately, not to get too technical, but the way that the current generative AI works is not cheap in terms of processing power, what's called GPUs, data center, all these things. There's massive expenditures to rebuild data centers essentially to work better with AI. And that's why GPT-4 costs all this money. And so it's not going to be free for everyone all the time, depending on the product. But things like Bing, we do make it free. So it's available for anyone. And again, it's a place where if you need to practice how to use prompting, what does that mean? How to iterate, how to experiment, that is available to anyone with a browser, essentially. So that's a place where AI is fully equitable for anyone to use and try out and learn.
Love it. And you said my favorite price. Carl's heard me say this multiple times. My favorite price is free $99. Free $99. Free $99.
And, I want to give one example, a powerful example that I heard of a student using Chat GPT or using AI. A student with disabilities is asking Chat GPT, hi, I have processing disorder. How should I study large groups of text? Like literally asking the question, give me some strategies. And then Chat GPT is like, break it down, use visuals, highlight and annotate, summarize and rephrase. So the power that gave that one student in that moment, high school student, preparing for a test, studying through a lot of history information. Hey, tell me how to do this. And so I just think about students not having access to that kind of power and what that does if you don't know what to do. But it's also knowing the right questions to ask and the right prompts to ask and how to use AI for good. I mean, that really is the hashtag. for the school year here in Atlanta Public Schools is how will we use this for good? And there are some immense examples I'm sure that we can all think about, but that's just one that hit me. And I thought, wow, think about what you just gave that student. And you can go back and you can look at that and reference it and take it deeper to make yourself more academic proficient. So it's a great thing. It's a great tool out here already.
I think that we've kind of hit on a bunch of pieces of this, but that whole element of people can't use this if they don't know about it, and they don't have time to actually get acclimated with it and get comfortable with it and see what some of the possibilities are. I think that piece of giving teachers, making that a priority, of not trying to fill up every faculty meeting with every single, if you got a 90-minute faculty meeting, filling up a 90-minute agenda with action, with actual bullet points and so on, but actually giving teachers time, dedicated time, to get out there and explore it, to see how other people are using these kinds of things. I think that's absolutely critical, especially in schools that have less resources, that don't have technology integration specialists at every single school working with the teachers and so on. The less resources they have, the more important it is to give them the time. I mean, you were just talking about a student with special needs getting more out of something like AI, getting specialized, individualized attention. I mean, even just for an average student to be able to say, "Hey, I'm using this textbook. I'm about to be quizzed on chapter 2. Can you give me? Can you create 25 questions on it so I can study?"
Yeah.
Take notes in class that didn't bring home the study guide, but if they have access to the site and they know to ask that kind of question, it's a game changer.
Yeah.
So, but they can't do it if they don't know it exists, and they also won't do it if a teacher hasn't said, "Yeah, that's cool. We want you to be using technology like this."
It's I think Aaliyah, you mentioned calculator. The calculator is great, but if I don't know what to put in first, I don't know what function to click next, it's not going to help me do anything. So while AI is a great resource and it's baked into so many platforms, and Carl and I, we've talked about this before, how it's been around for decades,
Right.
in a lot of things, to some degree, Clippy.
Oh, Clippy.
Clippy.
It looks like you're writing a
Immersive
letter.
Reader, right? Immersive Reader has been around for 7 years, and it uses AI for translation and neural text to speech and syllable. Like we would never historically trumpet it everywhere, but it was.
Yeah. So it's the thing. It's there. It's been here. But, because everybody keeps talking about access. We have to make sure our kids have access to these resources, our teachers have access to these resources. But with more access, we get more connectivity to that outside world. So how do we manage or balance like cyber safety, cybersecurity, to all this access we want our end users to have? So especially going into the start of the school year, it's this balance that districts are always trying to say, okay, well, you mentioned in New York, they blocked it initially. It could have been some cyber concerns that they had there or other things. So how do we balance access to resources and cyber safety? Mike, what have you seen?
Well, I guess cyber safety is a broad term, I think, because there can be, it could be anything from websites and obviously, things that you don't want kids to have access to, all the way to things that you have opinions on, which could be ChatGPT. Oh, is that safe? Is that not safe? And so, I think the New York City one is a great example, but every school is going to have different viewpoints there. I also think there's, even just from a cybersecurity, cyber safety standpoint, one thing that we hear a lot at Microsoft from schools, and especially more like, medium and smaller schools where they don't have an army of IT to help do things, is there's so many options for cyber safety and cybersecurity. There's like 50 tools, and I can't manage all these tools, and I don't have all the IT wherewithal to do it. And so simplifying that. And one of the things Microsoft tries to do is build a lot of those cybersecurity tools, cyber safety tools into a package that doesn't require an army of IT people to like manage and deploy and monitor and this and that. And so sometimes just simplifying, not like you need to go with one provider, but I mean, we've literally worked with schools that show us the number of cyber safety and security tools they have, and it's more than 50. It's like, how can you possibly wrap your head around that? And you're gonna, if that's the case, you're gonna probably make mistakes or do things kind of wacky, or oops, I forgot to update this tool, and oops, I forgot to turn on that tool. So I'm a big proponent of sort of simplification and focusing for clarity on what are the tools we need, how we think about cyber safety, because there's going to be a wide range of opinions on that, depending on district, state, country. We deal with global schools as well, so way outside the U.S. So that's sort of my viewpoint. Probably some of the other folks can speak more specifically to cyber safety in their specific schools and districts.
Steve?
To be honest, this is something I struggle with quite a bit, because I do feel like we tend to err on the side of caution, and I get that. As a school board member, obviously I want to keep our district lawsuit free and such, but at the same time, yes, lawsuits are a bad thing, but we can all agree on there. But
yes,
at the same time, we can lock things down to the point where it's almost impossible for students or teachers to do anything innovative. And we have to find sort of that fine line. In my opinion, one of the most important things you can do is make sure that you're bringing students into the conversation. And actually have them be, to explain to them, these are what the concerns are. These are what some of the rules are. How would you suggest we toe that line? I did this with my students last year with respects to AI, when there were a lot of teachers in the district or in the school that were concerned about it, and that were considering saying we should be blocking or we shouldn't be allowed to use it. Letting the students get experience with it, and letting them make the recommendations for, this is how we feel it can be used safely, how it can be used ethically, how it can be used responsibly, and let them actually craft the ethical use policy that then became an addendum to our actual acceptable use policy. Letting them be a part of that process gave them that sense of ownership, and it also allowed them to kind of see why we have these rules in place, why we have these filters. And when they have a better understanding of what the impetus is, and what schools, why they do the things that they do, I find they tend to be actually more empowered by it than anything else.
Yep.
It tends to be less punitive.
I love that.
Truly being learner-centered in that approach. Really love that.
That too. It's good.
Yeah, I took a different approach. I took a similar approach, but then kind of a different outcome than what Steve did when I was in my former district. And we did a similar thing where we basically said, this is pre-AI for the most part, but it was, social media was everywhere. This is 5-6 years ago. And it was, I got like a group of 30 or 40 kids in a room. I said, let's do a focus group. Let's talk about social media. Let's talk about the things you're worried about. Let's talk about what apps and tools do you use. And then I said, I'm going to set a timer for 2 minutes. What I want you to do is come up with as many social media apps as you can. And they listed 37 apps. And I, of course, blocked all of them. No, not really. But I was like, okay, never heard of that one. Let's go ahead and add Discord to the list. This is before, right when Discord was taken off. But what's funny about that is also, it kind of made me aware, and also parents that I've talked to in parent communities about this, is that, you're never going to be able to wrangle it all. But I think when you include them, like Steve is saying, that's such an important part of it. I don't think you can build, if you build a 20-foot wall, they're going to build a 21-foot ladder and get around it, right? There's nothing. So I think it's more about that empowerment. It's more about bringing them in as part of the process. And you touched on this just briefly, Steve, but that accessible use policy, I should say, or responsible use guidelines, whatever you want to call it, those do need some updating. And I think those need to be regularly updated. I think students should be a part of that process, teachers, librarians. I was at a meeting, a group, I think Steve was there. It was actually about a month ago, right before ISTE, with about 100 different leaders in a room. And I said, how many of you have updated any of your policies to include anything to do with generative AI? And 2 out of 100 hands went up. And I was like, okay, we're 1 month and change from the school year starting, and nothing's been. So address it, talk about it, bring it up, don't avoid it. I think you just need to include it and say, hey, here's what we think is going to work. And then just continue to adjust as you go.
That's good.
But they just try to treat AI like Bruno. We don't talk about it. You know, we don't talk about it. It doesn't exist.
Doesn't quite have the same ring to it, Adam. But yes,
not quite, not the same. Yeah.
Well, it has to be a little bit better. Like my parents, they were like, they said, Adam, what's this new thing called Al that everybody's talking about? I was like, what are you talking about, Al? And she's like, I keep seeing it on stuff. It's Al, and I'm like, okay. You know, but one thing that I want to make sure all of the viewers are aware of is one of the reasons why we're having this webinar is the amazing resources that we've been able to put together with conjunction with Microsoft. We have our emerging practices guides, and what these guides are resources that we've went through and we figured out, okay, these topics we're talking about, how can schools really attack and address these various things? So we're talking about leveraging career pathways in the classroom, ensuring equity and access for all, balancing safety and cybersecurity in schools. And with these tools, we have overviews. We've decided to put out some strategies that districts can use to implement it, and key components to look for as they are trying to do these various implementations in their systems. So check out those resources, and they are, as I said, my favorite price. They are totally free 99. They are free 99. The URL is there. You can check them out. Our AI guide will be released very shortly, and you can check that out. But these are resources that we've prepared for school districts to hit the ground running, beginning of the school year. And people love to say this, but this is true. These are living documents, meaning we're going to be updating these as arises, specifically the AI piece that's constantly changing. But of course, our cybersecurity piece, we know this is the time of the year where school districts, unfortunately, are targeted by bad actors out there. So definitely check out these resources. The link is there. Check these out. The link will be in the description as well. We encourage each and every one of you watching our webinar today to check out our emerging practices guide that we put together in conjunction with Microsoft. And as we are getting to the end of our webinar, I want to make sure that everyone is aware that all of our speakers here, all of our panelists, if you have any questions for them, they have their Twitter handles or X handles or whatever we're calling it now. Make sure you give them a follow, send them a DM. Everybody will. Yes, Threads.
I'll get the same.
Yes, Threads. Oh, you got both. Yeah, Threads, Twitter, Blue Sky, Mastodon.
K-12 leaders.
I feel like we're making a Power Ranger, like Mastodon, Threads.
Unite.
Yes. So parting shots for each one of our panelists as we are wrapping up. And we have these educators that are listening. So what piece of advice would you give educators as they start the new school year? Besides, viewing and downloading our emerging practices guide, we know that goes without being said. First. So, yeah. So what piece of advice would you give our educators listening today?
I think outside of just giving yourself grace to make mistakes, we always know that poor first period is not as great as third period. By the time you get to third period, you've got it down. But give yourself some grace. But what I challenged our new teachers to do is try something new. Think outside of the box about something new that you can try in your classroom, and look for the resources in your district that can help you do that thing. So I gave them a challenge, and I wanted them to tweet me on Twitter when they tried it out, or to let me know what they tried. So we can kind of create this repository of really cool things that teachers have tried in the classroom, and we can build on that. So that would be my advice.
Awesome. Thank you.
And to piggyback on that, I would say not only try something new, but if you do fail at whatever that new thing is, talk about it, open up to it, embrace it, talk about it in front of your students, say, hey, I'm trying this new thing. I don't understand what this AI tool is. We're going to figure it out together. Like, be open to that. We don't have to be the content experts in everything. And I think it's important to include them and let the kids know and hear that you too are trying new things and you're continuing to be a learner.
Yeah, I would similar. It's interesting. 10 years ago, when Microsoft got a new CEO, Satya Nadella, there was a huge cultural change that he implemented. If you've heard of growth mindset, growth mindset, fixed mindset, Carol Dweck, and the way he describes it as we have changed, I think at this point, our culture from a know-it-all culture, meaning fixed mindset, to a learn-it-all culture, which is the growth mindset. And I think even for educators who've been around a long time, I think should try to embrace that growth mindset when you're going back in this year, and that, hey, I want to learn about all this stuff. Like, I don't know everything, and I'm going to learn some stuff, try some new things, like Ilya and Carl said. So that's what I would say, the growth mindset.
My one piece of advice would be have fun with this stuff. I mean, this
Yeah.
stuff is so unbelievably
Yes.
freaking cool. I mean, why on earth would you just have your class rules written the traditional way when instead you could turn them into a Juice World rap or the Hamilton way or whatever? I mean, this stuff is so wicked cool. Just like play with this. Don't forget that the classroom is supposed to be fun. You know what I mean? So
Yes.
let the kids get into a mid-journey and create the coolest damn avatars they've ever seen, and and pull open the AI and just ask it some dumb things. You just never know where it's going to go, but like it should be joyous. It should be fun. It should be interesting, and don't forget that that's okay. It doesn't always have to be about the serious and the formative and the summative and enjoy.
Great piece of advice there, Steve. I think you got some new fans with that Juice World drop right there. So thank you for sharing that. Once again, thank you to our amazing panelists for being here. Of course, follow each and every one of them on social media platforms. We went through the long list, the gambit of tools that are out there. Once again, make sure you check out our emerging practices resources. The URL is right there at the very bottom of your screen. Make sure you check that out, everyone, and have a great rest of your day. And thank you for watching our webinar.